actually working with right now on the project at 144 East Pine, which turned out to be just such an incredible and beautiful home. I don't know if you've seen the pictures, and I sent some out today on the database, but yeah, really, really photographs well. Beautiful home. And David, also, you just finished up a project in Arcadia on Carrollwood, I believe. And we've crossed paths a couple of times. In fact, I saw your work probably about 10 years ago with the flip that you did on Altadena Drive, because that is like right when I started working with builders and investors. And we flipped a home on 430 Punahou was like the very first one. But it was like you were totally on my radar, but I didn't know you at the time, and pleasantly blessed to get to know you. So just wondering if you'd share a little bit about you and your background.
Yeah, that was one of my first projects that I did in Altadena was 237 Altadena Drive. And that was a really rewarding project. We took a very old home at that time. We got it for, I think it was a bank repo. And we added square footage. We did the entitlement, added square footage, added a whole new master and master bathroom to it. And then brought it back out to the market, and it was accepted really, really well. My name is David Lee. I've been in construction for over 20 plus years. I'm with adedu.com. I have had my California state license, contractor license for 20 plus years. So I grew up just like making things and building things, and it's just kind of stuck with me to this time. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, that's awesome, man. So did you grow up then here in the LA area?
South Pasadena. I grew up in South Pasadena. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So wait, were you like in high school then in like the 90s?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, yeah,
It's the original gangsters of South Pass.
yeah.
That's awesome. So then walk me through, like, you graduate high school, you probably went to university, and then what kind of drew you then to what you're doing, like with building and construction?
Right. So, yeah, I went to uh, high school and then I went to university, studied hotel and hospitality management. When I finished, I got a really good opportunity to work with this world-renowned architect. And so I jumped on that. And He was building a really big project. It was a big commercial property, about 100,000 square foot, revitalizing the whole center. So this project was in West Covina. A Ralph used to be the anchor tenant, and they moved on to have a food for less. But
Okay.
because of commercial leases, they were able to keep it dark, meaning not actually open business, but keep paying the rent because they had such a low rental rate. They kept paying the rent because they didn't want another supermarket to occupy that space because
Oh,
they have
interesting.
a food for less down the street. So after years, what happened was then, without an anchor tenant that's bringing in the traffic, a lot of that plaza or mall start dying out because all the little shops going, well, nobody's coming here. Nobody's, my dry cleaning business used to count on people coming
Sure.
to the grocery store to stop by and drop off their laundry or the mathnasium back then. They didn't have mathnasium, but, some sort of tutoring. Well,
Kumon.
a Kumon, would need that draw.
Mm.
So the owner was able to buy it at a great price, and they were able to get Ralph's out of there, and so we kind of revitalized the whole plaza. And Mr. Wang was the architect at that time, and he was I would call him a master architect, because he would not just draw up the plans, he was able to freehand draw.
Cool.
And proportion wise, be able to really proportion everything for you to see it realistically and source a lot of material, building material, decoration
Hmm.
from Asia at that time. And mind you, this was like, almost 20 years ago. So, um,
Hmm.
um, so I was able to learn a lot from sourcing the material to actually producing it to shipping it in and then to witness building of the plaza. And after he was done with the big project, he left back onto another big project, and I was still there, kind of dealing with all of the new construction that would come in. So people that would lease, let's say, a restaurant or a dental office or a hair salon, will come in and they needed a contractor,
Mhm.
and I was able to follow that whole remodel of the front. So I was able to learn the construction business, knew the city really, really well, and
Yeah.
got an opportunity to start doing construction and building things and go, oh man, I love this. I love this instant gratification, right? Because
Yeah.
once we start building, we were done in 3 months, 4 months, right?
Mhm.
For a tenant improvement project. And you're able to see some sort of design that was just in your mind or on paper, and then
Mhm.
flourish to something that you can be proud of, right? And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, not just the design, but then the space being used. People are enjoying and laughing in that restaurant space that used to be an empty restaurant. And that segue into commercial building, that commercial building segue into also residential, right?
Mhm.
Start doing the residential market as well. And now we're at ADUs, right?
Right.
ADUs have been popular for a while, and low income housing, things like that, that's coming on. So I have extensive background from commercial to residential. Residential, you have to be a little bit more detail, right?
Mhm.
I always tell people we have our ABC crew, right? A being, they're the best crew. They're very detail oriented, but
Mhm.
they're slower because, in order to achieve that detail takes a little bit more time, right?
Yeah.
And they're more expensive, right? Then
Mhm.
our B crews, right, are kind of the middle of the pack, and the C crews for commercial. They're quick, but they're not that detail oriented. But a
Totally.
lot of restaurants says, you know what, I just want it to open up. Nobody's gonna notice, this
Right.
little, imperfection. They can come down on the quality. So really depends what your appetite is for what you
Okay.
want to do. Of course, I rather do the A crew because I take pride
Yeah.
in my work.
Oh
When
man.
you're doing commercial tenant improvement, it's not, people don't always think the same. And we hit, what was it, 2008, and that was a really hard time. There was a financial
Mhm.
crisis, and a lot of, and what that's why I segue into residential, because a lot of the commercial properties, the tenants, they didn't want to spend money on construction anymore, and they wanted just to be as cheap as possible to be able to open the business. And I lost a lot of pride in my work at that time,
Mhm.
and the interest really stopped at that time. But I
Sure.
was able to find that outlet in residential, so I was very fortunate in
Yeah.
that case.
Man, that was such a crazy time. I don't know, one of my videos, I tracked the housing market from 2008 through 2012, which was the absolute bottom. And I was under the impression for a long time that Pasadena saw a 10% correction because that's what I've been told. When I look at the numbers, it was actually 20% at the deepest, which, I mean, compare that to Ohio, which saw 40%. That's savage. But I mean, still 20% is sizable. But
It's sizable,
it,
sizable, right?
it only took about 3.5 years before we met like the high of 2007, and then we're far beyond that now. So
Right,
I
right.
think I
So
get
if
that
you
question.
bought
Yeah.
in at 2013, 2014,
Hmm.
which I did, in some property, really gave us a boost,
Yeah.
once the economy got better. So,
That was the time, man.
and
I remember, yeah, when I started in real
I feel
estate.
like we're at that
Yeah,
time now, right?
we are.
It's you can't really judge when it's coming, but we have been stagnant for a very, very long time, right? From 2 to 3 years. We had a really great high, and we had a kind of a very sharp low point, and we've been stagnant for a while. So I hope in the coming years, that economy and the housing market will start getting better.
Yeah, I think, we saw that from, I say from 2015, 2014 to, I mean, really to the pandemic. It was just such like a up and to the right growth. But I'd say, California real estate is so hyper insulated because everybody wants to live here.
The
We do,
weather, you can't beat it,
you
you know?
can't
And
change
the
the weather.
people, obviously, right?
Yeah,
Like,
clearly. So I question wise, and this is one that I get a lot. And so because people are always wanting to renovate or touch the home, like what are like the key things that you see as being like adding the most value to a home when you want to do like an interior renovation within the footprint of the structure?
okay, for interior renovation within the footprint when you're not adding square footage, that's what
Right.
changes meant, right? What's going to add value to your home? It really depends on each house, particularly, right? But if it's just across the board, if all houses were the same, right, I would say the
Mhm,
master bathroom, okay, and the kitchen, right? Those
mhm.
are the two go-tos, right? And if those are great already, and there's some small weird space in your house, that doesn't flow, then you have to fix that. For me, I'm very much about the flow of the house, right? So even if you have a great bathroom and a great kitchen, but walking into the space, walking into the house, and it just there's a wall and there's a weird angle here, and to get to the kitchen, you have to go through three rooms.
Sure.
Maybe to get to a backyard, you need to cross a master bedroom or something like that. Yeah. Right? Like just odd, right? So sometimes little things like that, just fixing those little things can really increase the value of your home because somebody, it's very easy to say, but it's really at the end of the day where you live isn't about what you think or how great it is, right? But it's really about the feeling that you have in that house. So really
Right.
great home builders or architects and designers, they're able to capture that feeling when you walk into the house where you feel that comfortableness, that airiness. Just I want to be here, I want to stay here, I want to watch my football games here, I want to raise my kids here, but
Yeah.
bathroom and kitchen to answer your question.
So primary bathroom
Yep.
and then kitchen. So like, let's say someone's comes to me and they're like, James, I want to renovate my primary bath. What kind of budget should I set aside? I mean, because you can really blow the budget because finishes are everything. But like, what do you most often see?
Uh, it depends on the size of the bathroom, obviously. But right now, we are currently seeing people spend maybe around 15 to $20,000 on a bathroom.
Yeah, well, that's
Right?
pretty economical.
Yeah, just starting from scratch. With the back plumbing and everything else there. I'm just not saying just the makeup. Redoing tile, redoing the flooring, maybe moving the sink over, or
Okay.
changing your shower from one end to the other, or something like that. Not
Mhm.
not including entitlement and architectural fees, right? Okay.
Okay.
Not saying, and this is not including running new water pipes and
Right.
area kind of thing. Just around.
Not trenching the slab,
Right, exactly, exactly.
which can be savage.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so 15 to 20K. And then what are typical like architectural fees or what are some of those hidden fees that people don't think about? You know, what does that look like?
There's a lot of hidden fees that people don't think about. You have your architect, you have your engineer, city fees, permit fees, right? Depending on how much you're remodeling, and displacement fees, right? Are you
Mhm.
living in the house? You have to get Airbnb for a couple months. How comfortable do you want to be? There's a lot of those type of hidden costs in there. Um, Finding the right contractor is also very important as
Oh
well.
man.
And being in this business this long, we have unfortunately met some clients that got conned, by other
Oh my
contractors.
gosh.
I just and recently, I just heard of this case where they were doing a friend's house. They came recommended from a friend to do their house, and they left all the pipes coming up, right? Like it's been the water lines are here, the air conditioning is here, and they got paid, and then they never came back. And we went in,
No.
and there was no pipes underneath.
What?
It was just a copper pipe coming up to look like they did the work, but underneath, but
That's crazy.
they didn't want to get permits, and they were doing this remodel kind of unpermitted. So
So
it's
that guy
very
maybe
important to get permits.
yeah, was it an unlicensed maybe
No, they were. I
unlicensed?
think they were licensed, but
They
they just,
were okay.
yeah, yeah, they just,
How in the
it was
heck?
like, okay, like a handshake. Oh, you're a friend of a friend, and kind of thing, and
That's terrifying. So
right,
like,
right,
yeah,
yeah.
well, if someone were to find themselves in a situation like that, which is an absolute nightmare, what besides like, taking someone to court, like how do you pivot out of something like that if it's you're kind of in the middle of it so you can actually get the bathroom? I mean, what does that even look like?
I think that's something you have to ask a lawyer. I think
Sure.
me, my recommendation is don't get into something like that to begin with. Let's teach the consumers to be smart about this, right? Find licensed contractors that are well reviewed, okay, a part of the BBB, right?
Mhm.
And also, your contract is very important. Your payment plan is very important, right?
Yeah,
Meaning that you don't give too much of a deposit,
yeah,
okay, and you pay when you have to know kind of how much each section is worth and pay
hmm
to that amount, right? And not overpay. Because if you overpay, a lot of contractors will come in and say, okay, well, here, give me 10% and then give me 50% after that,
right.
and they only done 30% of the work. Then they already made their 20% margin, let's just say, that would be more than if they complete the whole job. Then what they don't
Mm.
have a reason to come back, and you want to go sue them and something that becomes a long and tedious process, and you're in
That's so
a house
stressful.
that you're not exactly that that you can't be living in, that you're not happy about, and you're dealing with this ordeal, and it's sad. There's a lot of even my mother-in-law almost got conned, when she was redoing
Really?
her house. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She found one of those on those, you get those mailers in
Oh,
the
sure.
home improvement mailers, and she found a very reputable company on it that's been in the business since 1903. Like we've been in business. So this contractor, they went and they bought this company. So that with that contractor that had it since that time is retiring now, but he still holds
Sure.
that license, or that license was associated with the company. And the new guy went to go buy it. I don't know how much they bought it for, but they didn't care, because at the end of the day, it wasn't their license on the file. The guy was retired, at old age
Yeah.
already, that actually owns the license. So they were able to market it and really kind of con people, like not
Mhm.
really do good work, and
That's
push for
terrifying.
money. And they were very aggressive in pushing her for the money and doing the work. But I didn't want to do the work for her because family, thing, you don't want to mess with your
No.
mother-in-law. But I helped her with the contract. I helped her looking over the contract, going with the payment. So even when it was, they didn't do the work that they were supposed to, the money that was supposed to go out was never paid,
Mhm.
out. So she was able to still retain a budget for the new contractor.
Mhm.
Okay.
So when you're, and this is kind of a minutia question, but like, let's say you're negotiating a payment plan with a contractor. Do you have like four milestones? Like, do you break it into a quarter, or how do you structure that?
Yeah, I think 4 milestones is good. I think for residential, depends on what you're doing. Obviously, one of the milestones is rough. You have inspection along the way, right? So
Right.
really kind of understanding the inspection process, right, and what work is to be done. The first is rough work, which is rough electrical or rough framing, or rough plumbing, something like that, right? So the first thing to go up will be framing. So that's a payment, once your framing gets done. Then it's your rough plumbing and rough electrical. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can actually see the wires. You can actually, see the sign off on the job card, that this part
hmm
is done, right? From that way, you're almost halfway through. Okay, once all your rough and you're able to close up drywall, right?
hmm
Okay, that's about 50% done. That's what I always tell my client. At that point, once you close up the wall, then you still have a lot of your painting, your tiles, your hot mop, your finishes. That is also a big sum, right?
hmm
So then kind of scheduling it accordingly to that kind of helps.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. But I think that's really helpful advice, because I think a lot of homeowners they don't know or aren't confident on how to like set that kind of stuff up. So I think that's really useful. And then as for like kitchens, and that's kind of the big wow. And I'm seeing more like as a trend in the homes we're doing, we're seeing things trend away from like hyper open floor plan. I think, the mid 2000 2015 in that era to like 2019, we're seeing just the whole house is just one big open thing. We're seeing less and less of that now. But in terms of what kind of things are you seeing, and what kind of budget should someone set aside for like a renovation of a kitchen?
Uh, Renovation of a kitchen. That's hard to say because
Right.
depending on the material that you use. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't want to give the wrong information on that. But a kitchen can be quite expensive. 30,000 and up.
Hmm.
for renovating a kitchen. But you're absolutely right about the open floor plan. We're seeing that less and less. But since 2019, what I have seen more is multifunctional spaces, right? So
Okay.
it doesn't have to be open, but a lot of people are working from home. They like to have that office space that's kind of closed off from the kids in a different wing than all the
Hmm.
bedrooms, so that they can work. Even in the kitchen, there's a little nook that they can do their Zoom calls, with a good background and kind of isolated, from the rest, is
Yeah,
also good too. So I think multifunctional spaces are very important in today's landscape.
that's cool. I think you're probably right. I would say that the impetus for the change in what we're seeing in terms of layout is probably the pandemic, because before you're at the office all day, you're not home with the kids, and then you come home and it's like, yeah, we're all together. Where if you're home and you're working all the time, yeah, it makes that private space way more valuable. I mean, like, I'm just talking right off the
No,
top of my head, but
100% agree.
sociologically, it's got to be
Yeah.
the reason, right?
No, that makes sense. Is right. It's like when you haven't seen them, you're out in the office all day and you come home, you get to spend those times with them. You want everybody, you want that open space to let's cook and watch everybody. Now it's like, well, I'm home all the time. You kids go and have your little private space in the living room, in the
Yes.
family room. Let me cook in my kitchen with some peace and quiet,
100%.
right? Let me make a nice dinner. Maybe I think you might hit it right on the nose with that, James.
Yeah. Well, it just came to me, but I don't know. Could be wrong. Um, okay. Well, I would say, what would you kind of, this is the last question on like interior renovation stuff, but
Okay.
what would you say is something that people can invest a lot of money into, but it doesn't add a ton of value to the house?
Swimming pool.
Okay. Yeah,
Swimming pool.
totally.
That's really for your own personal use, right? But if you're looking for as an investment, you rarely get that back. A
Yep.
swimming pool, right? And murals on the wall. We see a lot of,
Murals.
yeah, murals on the wall. We see
Yeah.
a lot of people that have certain tastes in murals, and I think they really enjoy that. But that's your own, taste that might not
Hmm.
transcend through your future buyers.
Yeah.
But swimming pool's a big part of it. Outdoor space, I do see a lot of value. People like being outdoors,
Yeah.
Um, but it's a shame. Swimming pool should add value to a house. It'll help it sell
Yeah.
faster. I feel like it might probably help
Yeah.
it be more attractive to people, but they're not willing to pay. You might put 70, 80, $100,000 into a swimming pool and might not see that come back.
You may not realize it.
Yeah.
It's funny because pools are very polarizing. Like when I'm showing a property, I've got a client who is going to be 1.5, well, maybe say 1.7 million and above. Sometimes there's an expectation like I better have a pool. But I'd say anyone who's below that price point, it's very polarizing. Buyers are just, some don't care, but some really do not want a pool. And it is, it's funny, it does limit your buyer pool by having it, I would
Yeah,
say.
it's really, I agree with you. It's very polarized because some people are like, well, I have kids, I want a pool, right? And some people, well, my kids are too young. That's just
Mhm.
too much liability. Insurance for it is very expensive as well,
Mhm.
right? I love it. I love being outdoors. I love being in the pool. Uh,
Yeah, me too.
Especially
You have a great
California
pool.
summers. Right? I was a swimmer my whole life. Played water polo. My kid's a swimmer too, so we love being in the water. Yeah.
Hmm. One thing that when I meet with homeowners for like listing appointments, they'll ask me if they've got solar, and they say, well, how much value does it add to my house? And frankly, that's one thing I see. It's like, I mean, it saves you money, but I can't say I can't give you a dollar figure where it's gonna like this, it pumps the value of the home. So I think a lot of people have expectation that it doesn't, but I've just not seen that be a real driver in terms of pricing.
Do you find that EV chargers are a good investment in, in a home? Like, do buyers
Like,
look?
oh, yes, I mean, if the buyer has like a Tesla or whatever EV car, but I wouldn't say, it's not something that I would say, hey, you need to get, if you want to list your home, go get an EV charger in your home, right? I wouldn't see it like bringing the buyers,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's nice to have. And I think when people get it, it can be tricky. What's hard about solar is transferring the lease or transferring it. You
Right.
have to go through a whole
Right.
nother process of underwriting.
Yes.
And sometimes
Right.
it can cause like a little bit of a hassle in
Right.
closing the deal.
Only time that it really makes sense if it's paid off, right? And you
Mm.
own the solar
But
completely. And it's easy to sell the
give
house
me that money.
If it's, through a lease transferring, it's a big issue. The Right now, if you build an ADU, right, or
That's
build
huge.
a new home, it's required to have solar, right? It's
Oh, okay.
required. It's required
Yeah.
to have solar now in the build, right?
Interesting. Okay.
That's so. Uh, but how good are those solars? I mean, it's not that great, because they go with the most minimal,
Right.
requirement over there. That solar that was put up there, is probably not generating enough power for you
Sure.
to have anything substantial, right? Because most of the people that are building it to that requirement, they're not building it for themselves, they're building it to sell, right? So
Hmm.
they're just going with the cheapest option over there. So I don't see it adding value to a house right now. And everybody's like, oh my goodness, it has solar, right?
Yes.
Because you really don't know how big that solar charge. I don't know the right term of it, but how much money is
Kilowatt
it saving?
hours.
A
Yeah.
kilowatt per hour is it doing it? Because people are doing it because they have to satisfy a requirement for an ADU. Then and it goes on top of the ADU and not the main house. And out of 1,000 square foot, you can only put in
Right.
so many solar, and it might just be satisfactory for half of that ADU size, and not for the
Hmm.
rest of the house. So what is that going to do?
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of a funny bureaucratic thing that they're doing, but you know, at the end, it probably is helpful to the environment. And kind of keying off into ADUs, what are some questions if someone's exploring an ADU? What are some of the questions they should ask a contractor? Like, what are some of the initial things they should think about?
Uh, Size of the lot, right? Size of
Yeah.
the lot. So the first thing I always tell my client, okay, at adu.com, that was a plug.
Oh, addadu.com plugged.
No, is really first kind of see if your main house is maximized first. Okay.
Mhm.
Why do I say that? A square footage wise, maximize, right? Why do I say that is because with the ADU law right now, right? If let's say your property was 12,000 square feet and you can build up to 3,000 square foot, okay,
Right.
on that property. Okay. If your house was built up to 3,000 square foot, you can still build that 1,000 or 800 square foot ADU. No problem. You
Yeah.
can go over your allowance to build, right?
Really?
Okay. Now, if your house, and not every city, but most city, right? If your house is 2,300 square feet, right? And you built that ADU, 800 square feet or 1,000 square foot ADU, and you want to go back and add up to 3,000 square feet, add an extra 7,000 square feet, they're going to say no because with the ADU already built, right? You're not you already maximize your square footage.
I see.
Does that make sense the way I explained it?
I think so. I mean, I think what you're saying is that you want to look at the primary structure first and make sure you're maximizing there in terms of square
Or
feet.
if you want, you have any future expansion of that, if you're
Yes.
I'm comfortable with this house and I don't care how much property I can build out of this,
Mhm.
size out of this, then go ahead and build that ADU. But if you want to maximize the square footage of your primary home first, right? Like in the future, then you should do that first before you build the
Yeah.
ADU. So it's kind of tricky how they give exception on square
Yeah.
footage to the ADU, but they once you built the ADU, they don't give you that exception. You're limited
Yeah.
at square footage
Well,
to
that's
the.
helpful. I mean, that's why I think talking to a professional and not just trying to do it yourself, I think you can avoid some of those like missteps, right?
Well,
Oh,
yeah, well, not everybody, say they're professional, but you never know how professional they are until you do without, yeah, right.
yes,
Yeah.
can be
So,
tough. In terms of building an ADU, what kind of like if you were to break it down at a price per square foot, what would that look like for like ground up?
for ground up, like again, it really depends on the size, on the geography, where the ADU is being placed, utilities, things like that. But we've
Mhm.
seen right now kind of the ADU pricing about 450 a square foot and up.
Okay,
Okay, depending on your finishes, right? Depending on your
sure.
finishes.
It's
So
gold plated. That may drive up the price per square foot.
yeah, right.
Exactly. Okay. And are there any design things that you're noticing with ADUs that people are looking for or that are sort of popular? That's something I don't necessarily know.
It really depends on the client. We've seen a lot of, I mean, I work with a lot more. people lately that are kind of have a more modern taste to it. So they do like the ADU being a open floor plan, right?
Hmm.
They want the 1,000 square foot one to have the two bedrooms instead of the 700 or 800 square foot with the one bedroom.
Yeah.
But it really depends on the house. Do you want it on top of the garage? Do you have room to, are you converting a garage? Or are you adding one? But they do like kind of, it's almost like, and they don't rent out the ADU, they can make it into like a big lounge area for the backyard kind of thing,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I'd like to at some point see some of the work, or maybe have some portfolio stuff I can throw in an email, and kind of let people know. I'm sure you got good photos.
Of course.
And then in terms of like time frame for ADUs, from conversation with someone like you to a completion, what does that typically look like? And does it vary, say, versus Pasadena to LA County?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
LA City itself, right now, we have stuff in the planning for them to reply. It used to be like a 2 week time frame for them to, once we submit something, for them to reply to us, even in Pasadena, 2 weeks. Now it can be 2 months before they reply, since
Really?
2015. Yeah. And then once they reply, then we have to make our corrections and adjustment and then send it back to them, and then it's gonna take them another 2 months. So I would say, cities, I used to say, take 3 to 4 months, to deal with the city, at most 6 months. But now I'm saying, with city and dealing just with entitlement and the permitting process can take up to a year, with
Wow.
before you even start building. It can take up to a year. Okay. And construction itself, for if you use somebody like us, that we have a crew that's ready to go and that can build, our fastest time to build an ADU, right? That is probably 7 months, is our
Okay.
fastest time. But we have seen some ADUs take longer, to 12 months, uh,
Sure.
or 18 months, depending, right? But
Is
we
the
like,
county kind of similar? Like, because in Altadena, it is county. Does it take equal amount of time?
yeah, I think Altadena, they have a little branch office over. I think it's Arcadia. Is it
Yeah,
in
on
Arcadia?
Baldwin.
On Baldwin, right?
Mm,
Over there. So they're pretty quick. That office isn't too bad, but things are changing all the time. A lot of cities outsource now, meaning that they
okay.
don't have in-house planner looking at it. No, they're sending it out to some outsource to do. And those people are not, they're not just working for one city, they're working for multiple.
Sure.
Right.
So
Right.
this is like the Uber of business of building planning,
Yeah.
right? I
So,
can't believe you're doing that.
yeah, I just recommend, like just work with a good architect, designer, uh, figure out what you want, submit right away, and then it's really left to the city to see when they're getting back to you. Uh,
Sure.
and you got to follow up with them because again, with architects, they don't have, a timer, on saying, oh, well, we have to go check with the city. You have to push them.
Okay.
And
So you've got to kind of help
yeah, and I
get
and
the
I push
architect
them all
out
the
there.
time, and they go in and they're like, "Well, we can't go. There's no one in LA County to really go in and see anymore. Like LA City proper, like we have to just email them and wait for them to email back,
Good.
right? So it's been a little tough, but
Mhm.
I think that's why you hire professionals to deal with that for you, and
Yes.
kind of just make sure that they explain the timeline to you really well from their experience, right? What's the shortest, what's the longest, and then when to go ahead and check and push on them because they're not just doing your project. They might be controlling 20, 30, 40, 50 project that's on hold.
Sure.
So whoever is pushing more, usually people kind of gravitate towards.
Hmm. Well, getting stuff done, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, you did a great project there in Sierra Madre. I think you added square footage. Did you find them challenging to work with? A lot of people complain about their municipality.
Oh, really? Sierra Madre? You know, I don't know if I can say this on camera, but they're going to hold me to it. But, the construction process was pretty swift. We didn't have much issue with the building inspector and everything else like that. Getting the plans approved to do the addition, that was a little tough. They were very much no, 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 don't do it.
Mhm.
Why don't you just wait until next year, in a couple of months? I'm like, no, I want to do it now. I want to get this approved now. I don't know what rules and laws are going to change by next month. I'm going to have to redo the plans on my setback and all these things. So we really had to kind of understand, I always say, thank goodness that I had experience in this and was able
Hmm.
to deal with that, because if I didn't have experience and I just kind of listened to the city and listened to the recommendation or let them kind of guide me around, that project would have never been taken place. So, we really fought really hard for that. They gave us corrections, and they made the kind of correction kind of confusing, where if you don't really study the codes and the rules, that you can be like, oh my goodness, that this is not doable. Then you
Right.
kind of read into it and go, hold on, this is not the way you wrote your correction kind of misled what the rule is, and you have to take the rule book out and explain,
Hmm.
like, oh, is this the one you're talking about? Okay, well, that means we can do it and we just do it like this. And you don't give them a reason not to say no, because sometimes cities, depending when you submit, they hit their quotas, right? The commission doesn't want to do any more ADUs until next year, because the law is going to
Hmm.
change, things are going to get smaller or whatever, or there's a new council people coming in place or whatnot, and they're just kind of discouraging you.
Yeah.
So a lot of cities, I know they have to do ADUs, this issue, but they don't want to. You
Yeah.
really get a sentiment that they don't want all these ADUs in, and they're kind of not making the process easy for you, and they'll run you around in circles. And I've been ran
Hmm.
around in circles for way too long. So
You just kept showing up. You'd show up and they'd be like, "Oh, hey, David."
yeah. Right. And now it's to the point where it's like, well, I kind of know this, I kind of know these rules. That's not how it's written. I don't,
Uh-huh.
I can show you, or I'll have my staff show it to you, and
Mhm.
then they kind of throw something else at you and be like, no,
Like,
right. Yeah.
that's good. I mean, I think that's really notable that you kind of stay on it, your crew stays on it, you get things done, and you show up down there. It's not,
I'm
it's
a
like
face to
kind of
face kind of
boring to
guy.
do,
Like I
but
said, I don't like being behind the computer and behind the desk. I need to meet with people. I think that's where life
Mhm.
is,
Yeah,
so
that's
yeah,
great, man.
thank you.
Well, I just wanted to see Emma and Max or Michelle. Did you guys have any questions, or you have some projects you may be thinking about? You like just a consultation? This is kind of open the floor for you guys. And if you don't necessarily want to come on and chat, you can put your questions in the chat as well. So I'm gonna kind of let me check my little while they're typing and thinking.
Hi, James. Hi, David.
Hi.
So I did have a question regarding additions and remodels in the general. We're staring down a refresh slash remodel. And the question I wanted to ask is, how do you balance adding new stuff while also keeping the old stuff that's financially sensible to do so? Because there's always the instinct to rip out everything and start from scratch. But how do you sort of balance the keeping the stuff that's good while also adding like value in the right places?
Right. I think that's a great question, and that's always been a struggle for me, because I love keeping the old stuff. I love keeping the character of the house, and I hate seeing things go to waste. And I think it brings a lot of charm, right? But you also want to modernize it, right? So that's where you finding a good designer, right, to work with, right? And you speak to them. You do, a mood board, right? Kind of figure out what design that you want, right? Clip out some magazines, clip up some, this is, I know magazines, nobody does Instagram feeds, Pinterest, whatever it is nowadays, right? Excuse me.
Well, on that note, Home Beautiful is a good magazine. That
Okay.
I checked that out. I think they got great design and good style.
Okay. And sorry about that. Some
Okay,
technical
House Beautiful.
difficulties here.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so it really depends on what it is. And, I would work with the client and look at it and go, look, this is kind of the feel that you're going for. I think this tile, in this section, in this bathroom, on this wall, kind of will fit with the new design. Maybe we can keep that and, do tiles on these two new walls, kind of bring it out, what not, kind of thing. But it depends what you're remodeling, and sometimes you go into a restroom and it's very old, and you have three walls in the shower, and it's dark and dingy, like a little cave in there, and you want to save that. And I like open space, as and if you're a designer that likes open space, you're going to go against that. So you have to find a designer that works for you, right? What is your style? So if you don't like open space and you like kind of like that cave like, shower room, then you're gonna have to find someone that can work with that, and they'll be able to kind of guide you on what you can save and what you can't. I hope that kind of answered your question.
Yeah, it did. Thanks, David.
You're welcome, Max.
Yeah.
Max,
I
right?
think,
Yep. Yeah.
yeah. And you'll see Max and Emma when you swing by 144 Pine. There's some really key features that were kept from the original 1907, including the banister and some of the doors upstairs, which were original, as well as it has the original River Rock foundation. But then all the systems, everything else has been modernized. So it kind of give you an idea of how David's phrasing that. Oh, we have Michelle had a question. He said, "Is solar required for a room addition?"
For a room addition, to add a room.
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends how big the room is. Different city has different square footage requirements. So once you go and add beyond a certain amount of square footage, right, then it's going to be required. But I think most room addition probably won't fall under that category, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, depending on the city and the rules.
Yeah, that's good. I mean,
Oh, and then touch on Max's thing. One more thing is just consistency,
oh yeah,
right? So you don't want to save something in the house that's not going to be consistent with all the new things that are coming in too. So it has to, the consistency, I feel like, has to run throughout the home.
yeah. I have a question now. In Max and Emma's property, there's some cool tiles that were like, it's like a backsplash, I think, and they're just kind of like interesting. If you wanted to, let's say you're renovating a home, is there any way to salvage tiles that are on the wall, or are those kind of, if you're gonna break them off, they're kind of gone?
Depends on the tile. Depends on the tile, right? The type of tile it is. But usually what we do is, we say, look, we're going to try to salvage as much as we can. So maybe from a wall tiles, we can salvage maybe 10 pieces, or maybe lucky a lot, a lot of it. But if we don't want to save 10, you want to keep some of that character. How do we incorporate these 10 pieces, as a focal point, as a detail into the new design, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you still have some character of the house left in it, right? But if you're
Yeah.
going to salvage just those tiles, then I won't even demolish that area.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. But Michelle has another question. She says, "Are there different rules for subdividing a house versus adding a freestanding building?" I'm not sure if I understand exactly
Yeah,
what she's
I'm not
getting
sure
at.
if I understand this question either. Different rules for subdividing house. So taking a house and subdividing the property
Legislatively?
versus adding freestanding building. Okay, so the building code it's going to be pretty much the same. Okay, as a builder, the construction code is going to be pretty much the same for building a home or subdividing a house. Now, what you may find different is the zoning, okay, rules, right, and the planning rules, right. So you would have to go to zoning and seeing if your lot is subdividable, right. Could it be, is there, can I subdivide this? Is my lot big enough to be subdivided? A lot of time the rules to subdivide, you have to have a certain amount of frontage on that lot, right? So, and the square footage, right? So they're saying, okay, zoning will be able to tell you that and go, look, you're able to subdivide it or you're not. If you do subdivide, that means you can build another house on it, another ADU, another junior ADU. So now on one property, turning from one house, you might be able to have 6 different uh, doors, I call it, on it.
Sure. In terms of doing a lot split, is that really challenging to do, or what does the process even look like?
It takes a little bit longer, yeah, to do. There's more details. I haven't done that many of them, so I'm not really well versed in that. But um, it's a little bit more tedious. Like I said, you have to go to zoning and planning first, give them the property, see if you're allowed to or not, then work with an architect to do that.
Got it.
Okay, and then once you do that, there's a lot more costs involved from the building side, right? Now you have to run extra you used to have one gas line, one gas meter. Now you have to run a whole new gas line in there for the second property, water meter, electrical meter, right? So now you're not just remodeling a house. Now you're bringing in all this new site work into the house, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I think at the end of the day, a lot split could make a lot of sense for someone if you're going to split it and build it, but it is going to be pretty expensive and long to do.
Right. And I think that's also a trend right now because there's new rules coming up to allow lot splits. And people say, well, look, we can, build more and rent out more, and it makes when the number works, the number works.
Sure. That's great. Well, do you guys have any other questions or things that are in your mind? We won't keep you here all night chatting away about. I feel like this was kind of fun, actually. I really enjoyed this conversation.
You
Yeah,
say
it
that
was.
to all your guests.
It was really fun. I figured out how to unmute myself here.
Oh, there you go. Hi, Michelle. Great hearing from you.
I'm really a terrible typist. So no, when I was talking about subdividing the house, I have a house that's kind of big, and I was trying to like just section off the back part of the house and create an ADU from that. And at the same time, in order to do that, I'd have to add a bathroom to the back.
Right.
Is that type of
that
thing
should be
legal?
easier. Yeah, you could. Okay, so what you can do depending on the size that you want to do. Most people that do ADUs are usually detached from the house, but a junior ADU, okay, a
Oh.
junior ADU is what you would be doing. All
Mhm.
right, and that one, a junior ADU has to be attached to your main home. Right. So what's
Okay.
great about that, you can do a junior ADU, and if you ever decide to do an ADU in the future, let's say you use, go ahead and subdivide, add that wall, add that kitchen, add that bathroom to the back, and you rented it out, and all of a sudden you're making 3,000, 2,500, a month rental, and it's a great tenant, and you're like, well, and you save up enough money from that rental, and you'll be like, well, I think I can do this. Let's take this into my retirement, and build an ADU and keep collecting rent, and I can live at my house for free and whatnot in the future. Then you can go ahead and still have that option to build an ADU.
That's good.
Okay, that sounds great. So the distinction there that it's a junior ADU rather than a detached ADU.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Of course.
The one thing that David and I ran into, we actually had a project that had an ADU and a junior ADU, is that because those are kind of new, some lenders are not caught up in that. So you can find those challenging for a lender to finance. So when you go to sell, you can hit a little bit of a snag. I'm sure in the next 3 to 5 years, that's going to be totally solved. But we did kind of have an issue and had to kind of work with the lender to make it happen. But I don't think anybody would, or a lot of people aren't even thinking about that. So something we ran into.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Well, any parting thoughts, David, as we kind of wind down here?
Yeah, I really appreciate you letting me come on and chat with you. It was very nice meeting everybody, and thank you for listening to me for the last hour.
Okay. Well, let me throw your contact info here in the chat. And what is the best email for you?
It's gonna be David. Just send it to info@adadu.com.
info@adadu.com.
Yeah.
ADDADU.com.
Yep, ADU.com.
All right. Very good.
Yeah.
And guys, I appreciate you jumping on. I'm thankful for the questions, and thanks for being here. And I'll be sending this out and can get a copy of it in case you missed something. So David, appreciate your time, and hopefully see it. Well, I'll be seeing you probably tomorrow anyhow.